right. Well, good morning, Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Boston, and welcome to our Facebook Live community. Welcome to our Sunday celebration, where 50 Dudley Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, our beautiful home here for the community. We are a community of what? Love, peace, joy, anything else? Power, abundance, joy, beauty, and compassion, yes. And are we radically inclusive?
Yes.
Yes, we are. That's what we stand for here. We are a community of conscious spiritual seekers. So we work in consciousness, do we not?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely we do. So that's the power. My name is Rev G. Stewart, and I, along with Rev Ed Tansey, are the spiritual leaders and the founders of this beautiful community of light, love, joy, peace, perfection, and all those wonderful words that we shared earlier. At this center, what do? We learn, we study, and we practice the Science of Mind principles, right?
Yes.
And we are so blessed that Reverend Dr. Ernest Holmes synthesized this teaching so that we can have a deeper experience of the divine of our choice and our belief. We can have that. We are radically inclusive. We celebrate all paths that leads to one's higher expression or feeling a knowing of that God of their understanding. It doesn't matter what you call this power, this presence, this divine essence. It's understanding that we use it all the time in everything that we do and everything that we say. And that we are constantly using this and adding that to our emotions and our feelings that empowers it into law, through our thought and belief into law to create our lives. I welcome our Facebook Live family to check out our website at cslboston.org, where you can find out more about our classes, because we do have online classes. We welcome and we bring people into our live classes so that they can enjoy and experience the power of the classes here. And that you can help to support our purpose in the world. You can see our full purpose there on our website, and you can give your financial gift where you are hopefully being spiritually fed, if this is one of your places where you're being spiritually fed. So I ask you now to please join me in the evocation as we set the tone for today's service. So moving within to that inner place, to that divine reality, to that understanding of the one infinite universal power. The one presence, the one peace, the one perfection, and the one wholeness. This presence that I call the Mother, Father, God, that is all and everything, is the source, the creative energy, the quantum possibility field, the allness of the universe, giving of itself in and as and through all of its creation. Bringing life to matter. Bringing all things into form. I know that this presence and this power is expressing itself individualized as me right here and right now. And as I know that about myself, I know that about each one in this beautiful room of love and light and joy and peace. And I know that for everyone who is watching us live on Facebook, or those who tune into the archives, I know that this divine presence is one with all throughout the cosmos. Or there is only oneness. And it is from this oneness that I call forth today's service, knowing that God is expressing as me right here and right now as I give this message this morning. And that I know that it is expressing as each and every one here. So I know each one is receiving and grasping what they need to carry them through their week. I am grateful for knowing that all of this carries through into our fellowship later on, where we will share in the food, the breaking of bread together. As our souls are filled, then we fill our bodies. So in gratitude for knowing that everything works in perfect order, the technology, all pieces, everything unfolds in perfect order right here and right now. Grateful for all of this. I simply breathe this word into law, knowing that the law which receives absolutely responds right here and right now. for this and even greater good. And my heart is full with overflowing good. As I say, blessed be, Amen, Ashe, Aho. And together we say, and so it is. So now I invite practitioner Eliza Swidarski up to do our spiritual reading.
So when Ernest Holmes speaks of mystics, he also speaks of poets. And before I read to you what Dr. Ernest Holmes had to say about mysticism, I wanted to share a short writing from this book called The Voice of the Master by Eva Bell Weber. I Hold You Close is what it's entitled. Sometimes, my beloved, when you give pause for a few moments of stillness with me, I would hold you close to my heart of love. It is very still. The candles burn softly, and the world, with all its confusion of mind, soul, and body, is shut out. I clasp you close, throwing about you a mantle of protection which shall be a shield all through the coming day. Ye, my love, shall ever protect and shelter you. You desire to love and serve me, feeling need of activity as you carry on the work I have given you to do. Yet how much more do you have need, or just a few moments to completely rest, while I pour out my love to you? My love manifests for you in many ways. In ways of health, strength, wisdom of mind, soul understanding. In friends with whom I surround you, all are manifestations of my abiding love. Likewise, does it manifest through happy work, through which you can express me and give forth the richness of my love to others. Be still with me a few moments in quiet meditation, and then go forth about your busy task to serve me with joy and gladness of heart. And Dr. Ernest Holmes says, what is a mystic? A mystic is not a mysterious person, but is one who has a deep inner sense of life and of his unity with the whole. Mysticism and psychism are entirely different. One is real while the other may or may not be an illusion. There is nothing mysterious in truth, so far as it is understood, but all things seem mysterious until we understand them. A mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth without mental process, arrives at spiritual realization. It is from the teachings of the great mystics that the best in the philosophy of the world has come. Who was there who could have taught these men as these? By way of process of mentality did they arrive at their profound conclusions? We are compelled to recognize that spirit alone was their teacher. They were indeed taught of God. Our great religions have been given by a few who climbed the heights of spiritual vision and caught a fleeting glimpse of the ultimate reality. No living soul could have taught them what they knew. The great poets have been true mystics who, through their poems, have revealed the presence of God. Men like Robert Browning, Tennyson, Wordsworth, Homer, Walt Whitman, Edward Rowland Sill, and others of like nature who have given us poetry which is immortal because they had a spiritual sense of life. Great spiritual philosophers are mystics. The old prophets were mystics. David, Solomon, Jesus, Plotinus, and a score of others. All had the same experience, the sense of a living presence. The greater music ever composed was written by the hand of a mystic, and the highest and best in art has come from men of spiritual perception. Man has compelled nature to do his bidding. He has harnessed electricity, caught the wind, trapped steam, and made them all do his will. He has invented machines to do the work of thousands. He has belted the globe with his traffic and built up a wonderful civilization, but in a few cases has he conquered his own soul. The mystic has revealed things that do not pass as ships in the night. He has revealed eternal verities and has plainly taught us that there is a living presence indwelling all. This constitutes the greatest intellectual and spiritual heritage of all ages. The balance of our knowledge of God must come as a direct impartation from Him. We must learn it for ourselves. The mystic does not read human thought, but rather he senses the atmosphere of God. The mystics of every age have seen, sensed, and taught the same truth. Psychic experiences, on the other hand, bear the exact opposite testimony, as they more or less contradict each other, for each psychic sees a different kind of mental picture, but the mystic experience of the ages has revealed one and the same truth. That was Dr. Ernest Holmes.
Thank you, Liza. Well, so here we are in 2020. And of course, our theme for 2020 from Centers for Spiritual Living is spiritual vision. And most of us have our book, Spiritual Vision, hopefully. If you don't, let us know. We still have some extras that we can make sure we get to you. They allow you to follow the theme throughout the entire year, which will be a wonderful opportunity. So, this month, we're getting grounded, we're going back to basics. So that's our theme for January. And then this day, as we so beautifully heard in the reading that we received, is what the mystics have taught. And this comes from Ernest Holmes, who himself, I believe, truly was a mystic. We know he had a mystical experience. I think many of us have had mystical experiences, but sometimes we put it off like it didn't really happen. You know, but Ernest Holmes, and even Ernest Holmes tried to put that off like it really didn't happen. But he was truly a mystic. And he wrote an entire chapter, chapter 20 of the Science of Mind text is about, that's the very title of it, what the mystics have taught. So what I'd like to speak to you today about is what mysticism, or being a mystic, means to us in Science of Mind. I want to look at a few differences between mystics and psychics, and I want to talk about why mysticism is important to us in this teaching in the Science of Mind. So those are the points I want to make today. So let's begin with what's a mystic to us in the Science of Mind? Well, that beautiful reading that you shared this morning, practitioner Liza, it speaks to that. And that is, here is one of the pieces from that, a quote from that actual reading that you did. And that is that a mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth and who, without conscious mental process, arrives at spiritual realization. Anybody ever done that in your life? You have, haven't you?
Yes.
It's possible. The mystics include the great prophets, the inspired writers, the illumined souls of all ages. All the mystics have recognized the absolute unity of God and humanity or man. So that's what we're talking about here today. The important thing to look at is that this was done without conscious spiritual process. Not to say we didn't do it without spiritual practice, but it was done without conscious spiritual process. So nothing is being forced. It's an inner knowing. It's deeply connecting with our intuition and sensing truth. I remember when I was a kid that for me, this idea of God was not a difficult thing for me. The God that I understood as a kid was really this amazing power of love. That's what I remember as a kid. And now, anybody else remember that about the God that you may have early on in your life? I'm not talking as we started to learn the stuff that we were taught about God. Because my idea as a kid about God and the adult's idea of God were two very different things. The God that I understood was this sense of absolute peace and joy and perfection. It was all love. It had no ill will towards anyone. Now, when I was being childish, it did, but when I was childlike, right? There's a difference between childish and childlike. And so when I was in that place of that infinite joy of a child, I got this, and I experienced it. So what happened along the way is as I grew up, I started to listen to all of the adults around me who meant well, but I started buying and distancing myself from that God of my understanding, that God that I knew as a child, that I was born into, that I was born from, right? That I came from. So that's why we need to deepen our spiritual practice all the time. And I spent much of my time getting back to the God of my understanding, and blessedly found it here in Science, Mind, Philosophy. The God of my understanding is what I meant here. There is, of course, then, just the spiritual realization. So, there is this that Ernest Holmes also talks about in the Science of Mind text, and it comes forward from that idea of the spiritual realization, right? So, in moments of deepest realization, the great mystics have sensed that one life flows through all, and that all are some part of that life. That's what I got as a kid. Anybody else remember that? It wasn't in those fancy words, but I got it. I understood it. And then I forgot it. And now I'm remembering it again, right? Because that's what we come together for this. So these are the pieces. Now the final piece is to remember that these mystics are just regular people like you and me. They're not someone out there. They're not in a trance state. They're not speaking in tongues. They're simply speaking from a deep place within themselves. And I think we've all done that at one or two times in our lives. And we try to do it more and more as we continue to practice this philosophy. Would you agree? Yes. To speak from that place, that deeper realization. So, Ernest Holmes says this further. Remember, all of this takes place in a perfectly normal state of mind and has nothing whatsoever to do with psychic states. It is not an illusion, but a reality. And it is during these periods that real revelations come. Have you ever felt that?
Yes.
Yes, you have. You've recognized at one point, it's like, yes, and this is the right direction for me, right? We work in it, and then all of a sudden it's like, yes, that's the direction I'm going. So now there are those who might say that for us to say that anyone can experience this is belittling the mystics of old. And I love how Thomas More puts it in his book, A Religion of One's Own, a guide to creating a personal spirituality in a secular world. Isn't that interesting? He says this, he says, I'm painfully aware that experts in the field like religion and spirituality sometimes feel that bringing mysticism down so far into ordinary life is an insult to the great mystics and makes it too light and breezy. I feel just the opposite. I believe that one day we'll understand that we've lost out on religion because we made it too lofty and distant. I see it as a simple quality of everyday life, and in that simplicity lies its beauty and its importance. Powerful. I love what he says there. He's speaking to us. We can be that mystic. Ernest Holmes believed we could be that mystic. And that's what we really are, is a mystical belief system. We're getting that deeper understanding. So my understanding, our understanding of mysticism gives us the great opportunity to experience oneness unbridled and free of limiting dogma. Anybody glad I'm free of dogma? It separated me from the God of my understanding. Jesus was not the great exception. Instead, he was the great example. After all, what did he say to us? Greater things than me will ye do. He didn't say, I'm the only one who can do this. He said we can all do this. It's that deeper understanding. Now that we have a basic understanding of what mysticism means to us in the science of mind philosophy, we can talk about some differences between psychism and mysticism. Ernest Holmes explains that the basic difference between the two are a psychic sees largely through his own or another's subjective mentality. Consequently, his impressions are more or less colored by the vibration of his own or another's thought. They are working in effect or condition based upon their own or another's mental consciousness, right? He goes on to say that is why, generally speaking, two psychics see that no two psychics see the same thing. He says mystics have all sensed one identical reality, and their testimony is in no way confusing, because the spirit within them has borne witness to the same reality. And I might add to that, the spirit within you has borne to that same reality, because you can do this. Now, he's in no way saying that psychics are bad. He is simply saying that they are working in human effect and not within first cause. Did you know that right here in this community we have licensed mystics, or as we call them, practitioners? Practitioners who have taken the time to become licensed are trained to have sessions with you. And in those sessions, they will move you from the limited belief into the truth of your being. It's a powerful, powerful tool that we have here in our community to see through the effect and reveal the divine truth. I work with my practitioner regularly to move myself out of limited beliefs and into my divine truth regularly. Who has a prayer partner here? We should all have prayer partners, and if we don't, find one, because they make your life stronger and better all the time. Now, Ernest Soames said this, and I love this, about our teaching. And it actually says it on the newest book that they've come out with. That's why I put this picture up here. That science of mind is a philosophy, a faith, a way of life. That's what we are. We're a philosophy, a faith, and a way of life. So we're not moving into this place of being beyond the reality of life. I like to say that we are practicing to be mystics. So we who practice this philosophy, faith, and way of life are creating daily something that I found in this book, The Art of Mysticism, a practical guide to mysticism and spiritual meditation by Gabriel Saron. And he says, only when the true essence of who we are becomes known to all of us can we as humanity turn away from the darkness of the past towards the light of the present. And when we talk about the present, we're talking about now, right? The power of now. Then and only then can the whole cosmos finally become a place of harmony, peace, and happiness to all living beings. So what each one of us is doing individually is opening this great possibility right here. A world that works for everyone and all of creation, right? What we say we are as a community. So we do in this community, what we do in this community is we daily remember to see the divine or God of our understanding in everyone and everything. Challenging? Yes. worth it? Yes. Because it moves me out of the limitation and into the fullness and the allness of my life. One of my favorite professors at the Holmes Institute when I was in ministry school was Dr. Amit Goswami. And in his book, The Self-Aware Universe, he says this. I love this man, quantum physics professor. He was the best. He says, if ordinary people really knew that consciousness and not matter is the link that connects us with each other, and that the world and to the world, then their views about war and peace, environmental pollution, social justice, religious values, and all the other human endeavors would change radically. It's our consciousness that is creating our world around us. That's what he's saying. That's what he's telling us. He's reminding us that it's not in the matter. But there is consciousness in the matter, which is beyond the Newtonian law. The modern law is saying there is consciousness even in that matter, even if it may be simplistic consciousness. And that as it comes together, it creates a greater consciousness. And we're made of matter, are we not? And so we are all that. Because there's divinity in even what they used to call the dead matter, but it's not dead. We know that. It's alive. It's awake and it's aware. So you see, we are the ordinary people that are working in consciousness to see the world with these new views that he is speaking of in that quote. We do not make changes in matter or the physical world. We make changes in our consciousness, and matter or the physical world show up differently. Right? So we are controlling matter with our consciousness to bring forward new forms into our lives. Experiences, physical things we desire, money, all of these things are coming through consciousness and coming into form. Because our thoughts become things. We are radically changing our consciousness to create a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. And that's the important point. So my call to you today is to be a mystic at work. And you can do that by reading some of these amazing authors that are out there. We can read Rumi, Jesus, Meister Eckhart, what was it, Ava Bell Weber, right? Who was one of the greats of our past, by the way. Her book was written through Science of Mind. Yes. And it was actually, I'm going to read a quote from her out of the Science of Mind magazine from this morning, because she was one of the greats in our movement. So you never knew that, right? So when you brought that forward, I was like going, oh my God, I love it. It's so beautiful. I love how spirit works. So, there's Joel Goldsmith, there's Ernest Holmes, and that's just to name a few. And we need to find and follow your spiritual practice that helps you to remember that God is all there is in the seen and the unseen. And last, open your heart, your eyes, your ears, and your mind to experience the divine mystery that is found all around us. In other words, take the time to remember who you are, an expression of the universal infinite source every day. Now I want to read these because it's just so amazing that all of these little pieces happened. So I talked about Meister Eckhart, and it's in the Daily Word today, which is it's the Unity magazine of daily affirmations. It's just so funny that it starts right here. Meister Eckhart, a 14th century German mystic, taught, all that God asks you, most pressingly, is to go out of yourself and let God be God in you. Wow. And then, in the Science of Mind magazine this morning, and I was so moved by this because it was just so funny, and then you end up, what was it? It was Quiet Talks with the Master, right? Is that the name of the book? Ava Bell Weber.
The voice of the master.
Oh, The Voice of the Master. Okay. Well, this is Quiet Talks of the Master, so that must be another book that she did. Okay? And she said, "Oh, my beloved, how necessary that you live with the eye single to the high purpose of your calling." That's being a mystic. To be in that place of the high calling. And then the last thing I want to share with you, it's amazing that all of my spiritual practices this morning, all of them tied into my talk this morning. So, in the reading this morning, I just want to share this little piece from here. It said, "The everlasting arms are beneath, but they bear us up only when we enter into truth." They bear us up only when we enter into truth. The Quran tells us that God increases our guidance once we have guidance. This is a mystical way of saying that if we believe in divine guidance, then we will be divinely guided. And I love how he said, he even explains when he says the mystical. He says mystical does not mean mysterious. It means an intuitive perception. And what do? We work in intuition, in our intuition, developing our intuition to recognize that God is indeed in everything. Act as though I am and I will be. Right? So my call to you this week is to remember who you are. Stand in your power and trust that you are a mystic in the world. You are bringing forward a new mystical vision. That's what I ask. Are you willing to do that with me?
Yes.
All right. Namaste. And if I can call forward practitioner Liza to do our spiritual mind treatment and pray us out, right?
So this is the sacred time in our service for our affirmative prayer, our spiritual mind treatment. So if you're comfortable, you can close your eyes or be comfortable in your chair, whatever that means to you. You can feel the groundedness and the oneness with this room and with each one present in the room. And then elevate, taking note of the heartbeat, your breath, knowing that it is God, it is Source, it is Spirit that is breathing you as we enter into this sacred time of prayer. And I speak my word knowing the power in it, through it and of it. I speak my word with an inner knowing and conviction that each one here present in this room, each one on Facebook Live, and that all of humanity embraces the experiences, the beingness, and the knowingness of life, that there is one power and one source. This source is Spirit, this source is God, and that each one here lives in a consciousness of the interconnectedness of their being with this one. I speak my word knowing that each one here identifies the mystic within, the inner knowing of the spiritual truth and reality behind all things. And knowing this and seeing this and knowing that God is real as the light, as real as all creation, the cosmos, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the human body, and within that body, the human spirit, which is an eternal spirit that is far beyond this existence in this third dimensional realm. That the spirit is eternal and interconnected with this great source. I know that God is all life, all love, and an energetic transformative source of light and love and beauty. I know that Source is creative, the vast architect of all things seen and unseen, all manifest and unmanifest form, infinitely precious and abundant and overflowing. And I know I am one with this Source, one with this divine presence, one with this light, one with all of this love and the truth. And I know that my experiences with Thee One are the essence of my being, a divine creative soul, a divine creative spirit, living, moving, and breathing to reflect God in form. And as I know this is true for me, this is true for each one here. Each one here is a guiding light, a spark of the intuitive power, the word, the thought form of the divine presence that I call God, that I call Spirit, that I call truth. Each one here is a representation, a microcosm of the macrocosm. A life flame and source so great, with all of the divine powers and spiritual dominion in which creation had its place, thought, and purpose. And knowing the truth of the being of each one here, I declare and proclaim that the consciousness of each one in this room and on Facebook Live and in humanity embraces the truth. That as emanations of a God source, that there is no separation. There is an interconnected oneness of each spirit to God, in God. And this connection is a bright light, a compass. There's an intuitive voice that guides and a knowingness of the being of each one here, of the spiritual reality back of all things. And because of this, there is no appearance of lack, discord. Knowing these appearances are false, there is no appearance of fear, only love. And grace takes over in the heart space. The heart space is the guide of life, the guide of God within. And I'm grateful for knowing this truth, the truth of the being of each divine presence that surrounds me in this space and in this life and beyond life. I'm grateful for knowing this and feeling this with the theme and a quality of the mystic that I am. And I release this word into the action of divine law, knowing it is done, knowing the power of the presence that lives, moves, and breathes in each being is so great that with a gentle surrender to the heartbeat and the intuitive guide, that the answer is always there for each one of the truth of the being. And as I release this word together, we say, and so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you. Beautiful prayer. So we're ready to make an affirmation for ourselves today.
Yes.
So here's our affirmation, which comes from our retired ministers of CSL, which I love. Let's read this together. I open my eyes, my ears, my heart, and my mind to the infinite presence and discover within myself the great mystery. We can even say mystic. Let's read that again together. I open my eyes, my ears, my heart, and my mind to the infinite presence and discover within myself the great mystery. And that is where it exists. And so it is. We claim that as truth. So now is the time in our service where we welcome our guests. And we have a guest this morning.